they were very carpe diem. They were like, live each day like it's your last, each moment. Cherish your friends and family, cherish your loved ones, because we're all mortal, and a time with a friend or a parent or whoever, it might be the last time. So it really pulls you into the present moment, and it says, don't waste time with people that you love, because not only, like, when if they died tomorrow, not only would you be devastated that they're dead, but you've also then got the regret that you didn't actually make the most of this person while they were still alive.
Brigid, where I would love to start is in relation to your new book, Reasons Not to Worry. Mm-hmm. And in it you shared, making meaning has always been my way through. And a question that you posed in your book in relation to this, which I would love for you to share more on, is how do we find consistent meaning in a time of continual change?
Very good question, and a deep one to start with.
Yeah.
We find meaning by, I guess, having a philosophy or having a way of life that is consistent and allows us to cope with the change without being destabilized. So my philosophy might be, no matter what happens, I want to be a good person, or I want to treat others well. And that should be applied consistently no matter what's going on in the world, whether there's a pandemic, wars, cost of living crisis. That becomes a consistent through line. And I think that can actually not only make the world a better place, but it can help stabilize you when things are tumultuous.
Yeah. And as I shared, you did share that making meaning has always been your way through. What is the meaning or the philosophy that you apply in your own life?
I guess my philosophy, I mean, there's been many philosophies. I've never had kind of just one over the years, but a general philosophy is treat people like you would want to be treated. And the meaning I get from how I live my life is through stories. I'm a storyteller. So if something terrible happens, I think, oh, well, at least this could be a good story or a fun story.
Yeah, it's a great way to look at it.
And then life becomes almost like a collection of stories. But in recent years, I was raised Catholic, and I grew up in the Catholic Church, but in recent years, I've stopped going to church. Stopped going to church many years ago, but I felt this real need to have a connection to something that was greater than myself, and that could kind of help me through not just the small things in life, but the big things like death, grief, loss, and pain. And I found this philosophy called Stoicism, which has been incredible in helping me navigate, the good and bad in life. It's just this system that's been sitting there for thousands of years waiting for us to pick it up. So that's been
waiting for you to simplify for us all.
So that's been what I've reached for recently. And I can't imagine sort of putting it down now that I've discovered it.
And I really want to dive deeper into this philosophy, particularly in relation to, you talk about sort of the idea of being able to grapple with life's uncertainty and chaos. And I think that's just obviously so appropriate in real time to sort of what's been going on in the last few years. What is it about Stoicism that has helped you sort of grapple with that?
So Stoicism assumes that there's going to be suffering in life. It doesn't assume that things will be perfect and that everything will work out. It assumes that things will go wrong. And so starting on that basis, they then say, well, how do you minimize the suffering? How do you minimize the grief that you might feel when someone dies, or the anger you might feel when you miss out on a promotion or a job? How do you manage the heartbreak you might feel when someone breaks up with you? So it starts from that position and works backwards. And it says, expect these things to happen. And by expecting them to happen, you won't be taken by surprise, and also you'll get over things a lot quicker. So the main tool of Stoicism that I advise people new to it to use is this thing called the control test. And the Stoics say you can only control 3 things in life: your character, your actions and reactions, and how you treat others. And everything else is outside your control. And so if I'm, say, for example, I find an apartment that I really love and it's for rent, and I've already put my furniture in there kind of mentally. I'm dreaming about going to the cafes nearby, and it's brilliant. And I apply and I don't get it. That can be really like distressing. You've missed out on something. A Stoic would say, look, all you can do is do your best with the application, but you can't control if you get the apartment. That's up to someone else. So don't suffer twice by getting upset if you don't get it. You're already going to suffer once by not getting it. Just move on. So it's a way of working out what you can and can't control, and then just moving on if things don't work out.
And how does this apply sort of in relation to something maybe that feels a little bit more embodied, like anxiety?
So Stoics wrote, I mean, we think of anxiety as being quite a modern thing, but the Stoics who were around 2,000 years ago wrote a lot about anxiety. It was common then as it is now. And they had a couple of techniques for anxiety. One was one foot in front of the other. You don't become overwhelmed by thinking too far ahead. So as soon as you start to feel anxious, just break it down into really small steps. So, for example, I'm currently on a kind of nationwide book tour, and I'm still doing my day job, and it's a lot.
Wow.
I'm overwhelmed, and the Stoics say to me in relation to that, break it up. What do you have to do in the next hour or the next half hour? What do you have to do today? Don't think about tomorrow until tomorrow comes. And Marcus Aurelius, who's a Roman emperor, said, basically, don't be anxious about the future. You'll meet tomorrow as you have met every day. You've gotten this far, and you've met all the other days successfully, so you'll meet this one successfully. In relation to the control test and anxiety, it's this thing of if you can't control it, the pandemic's a great example. And say for example, a year ago, I was living in Sydney in lockdown, and there was a lot of anxiety going around. And the control test was, what can I do to control my situation when there's lockdown orders, there's a virus, there was no vaccine? And it's like, okay, well, I can control whether or not I wear a mask. I can control whether I socially distance. I can control how many people I see. And in terms of the sort of social isolation of lockdowns, I can't control the fact that we're not allowed to see people. That's a law. But I can control maybe how many phone calls I make a day, or how many, my exercise, or when I get up in the morning, or how much I drink. So it's just about sorting out what you can and can't control and putting your energy in what you can control.
What I love about your work is really how clear you make it that it's a rule, and it's really quite black and white. And within that, there's quite a sort of experience of freedom and liberation that I think comes with that. Can you speak more to that, please?
Yeah, I guess the experience and liberation is in your area of control, which might not seem like a lot to begin with. Like your own character and your own reactions have quite a big, they have quite big resonance. So you might have a friend, say you have a flaky friend, and she's always late, she's never where she says she'll be. You can't rely on her. And that can be really frustrating. And you might think, I'm not in control of this situation. This person's, agitating me. It's terrible. But you actually have control in terms of how you react and your own character and how you model how you want a friendship to be. So you can do, in that situation, you can't control her lateness, but you can say to her, my preference is that you are on time for these reasons. And you can also control your temper when she's late, like you can not turn the situation into a massive, friendship fail. And, and you can also control how you treat her, so if you're someone who's always on time, then that signals to others that they should be on time.
Yeah.
So within these things where you feel like you don't have much control, there is actually levers that you can pull. And look, at the end of the day, if the friend doesn't change, you can't change them, but you can,
right,
you can decide to withdraw or maybe not do stuff with the friend that's time sensitive. So there is a scope.
In your book, you share about sort of this idea that you run in the energy of chaos. And initially you sort of had these doubts about Stoicism and how it sort of would help you in your own life. What is it that you sort of learned through having initially those doubts and now sort of being someone that practices this?
I mean, in many ways, Stoicism taught me to tame the chaos. For example, constantly losing things, laptops, keys, wallets. A lot of that is within my control to take better care of my stuff,
right.
So I've had situations where things have been stolen. I had a laptop stolen a couple of years ago. That's out of my control. Someone steals from me. But I can keep an eye on my possessions, and I can, I can put in systems. So sometimes I've definitely done this of saying, oh, that's just my personality. I'm just crazy like that, or blaming other people, but we do have the power within ourselves to make changes that might be tough initially, but we can do it. And that's part of the character piece in Stoicism, which is, they used to journal every night and they'd write down, well, how did I go today?
Right.
Like, was I able to, did I treat people well? How was my character? And then they tried to note an improvement in how they behaved. So they weren't writing about this person, this person pissed me off today, or this person did that. They were writing about themselves because they could actually change their own behavior. And so Stoicism is quite empowering because it says, you can't change if someone steals off you, or, if you get the job or don't get the job. You can probably keep an eye on where you left your phone last, or what you've done with your ATM card.
Yeah, it really plays into that sense of agency, doesn't it? It's like, okay, yes, we can accept the things that we can't control, but with the things that we can, like take initiative, be responsible, really take care of the stuff that you can take care of, which really plays into what you're speaking to as that sense of empowerment. What I'd love to speak to you about is death, because I know that this is quite a profound theme in this philosophy. How is it that Stoicism sort of helps us to prepare for death?
Yeah, big question, and important part of Stoicism, which a lot of people freak out about, but it is the cornerstone of a lot of the philosophy, because Seneca, one of the great Stoics, said we're dying every day. You could be a baby and you're still on that journey that we're all on, which is to the final day. And the final day is just a culmination of all the days. And it's just, it's the end. And we don't know when that's going to happen. Each of us has a different timeline, fate, whatever you want to call it. And so they were very carpe diem. They were like, live each day like it's your last, each moment. Cherish your friends and family, cherish your loved ones, because we're all mortal, and a time with a friend or a parent or whoever, it might be the last time. So it really pulls you into the present moment, and it says, don't waste time with people that you love, because not only, like, when if they died tomorrow, not only would you be, devastated that they're dead, but you've also then got the regret that you didn't actually make the most of this person while they were still alive. So it's, Seneca talks about let us greedily, enjoy our friends, like be greedy for their presence. Don't be on your phone constantly, kind of with them, but not really with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great thing to have, in your life, to appreciate people more and to cherish them. They also talk about, grief's such an extraordinary blow and such a big thing in people's lives, but the Stoics like to give themselves a little bit of grief by imagining the death of their friends and family. So you have a tiny, kind of image in your head of someone dying in an accident, and that's like, whoa, that's harsh. And then that kind of that's meant to inoculate you, should they die in an accident.
Right.
And it's also meant to inoculate yourself for your own death. If you keep front of mind that we're mortal and we have a finite time on earth, when your time comes, I mean, so many people seem to be shocked that they're dying. Like, what do you mean I've got a year to live?
Yeah.
And it is shocking, but the Stoics, they lived in a time where people, medicine wasn't as advanced. Children died young, women died in childbirth. And so they needed these practices to accept things that, happened every day, but were incredibly heartbreaking and grueling. And look, we need them now. We're a very death-denying culture, and I don't think people are prepared. And yeah.
How has this particular practice influenced or changed the way that you show up in life?
It's influenced me profoundly. Like, it's kind of, it's changed a lot of aspects of my life. But one of the main things is they have this word called Ataraxia, which is kind of Greek for evenness or peace. And they didn't like to go too high or too low. They like to be in homeostasis, to be balanced. And that's something I've really taken on. I had high highs, but I also had low lows. And often I'd let my emotions run the show. And that can have a destabilizing effect. As I get older, I want to be stable for my friends and family. I want to be there for people. I don't want to be, I'm less interested in drama, less interested in, chaos, and more interested in kind of equilibrium, being chilled. Like, I just want to be chill. And that's something that the Stoics were. So there's a bit of sadness that I am dampening some of the highs, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah. I want to go deeper into emotions because it's certainly something that I was very interested in what you share in your book. One of the things that I think has been profound in my life in terms of just relationship with people, and I have a Epictetus quote here that you shared: "A man should be concerned with his own emotional reaction to his brother's anger rather than his brother's anger himself."
An incredible quote.
It's a beautiful quote.
So, I mean, it's the kind of one thing that I just think, wow, yes.
Yeah.
So I often get asked this in relation to drinking. So people's drinking, you're worried that someone's drinking too much and you want to change their drinking, or you want to change their, a habit they've got that you don't like. And I've certainly had that in my life where I've been like, I want to tell someone off for, their behavior.
Yeah.
And I have done that. It's never worked. People don't.
They learn through their own experience.
Yeah. You try and change people, they are quite resistant. So what the Stoics say in relation to that is be a role model. If you think someone's got a foul temper and you keep telling them to, calm the farm, the best thing you can do is actually be a calm person with them.
Yeah.
Rather than screaming at them to be calm. It's, the same with drinking. It's don't tell someone that they're drinking too much and then get really drunk with them. Be moderate. Just show, Epictetus also said don't talk about Stoicism, embody it, be the philosophy. And yeah, the quote that you mentioned earlier about your reaction to your brother's anger, that's one of the three things within your control is your reactions.
Yeah.
And, a strong reaction, an angry reaction to someone's anger takes you out of that tranquil state. It takes you out of ataraxia, makes you more liable to be reactive. It ruins your day. You might then take your frustration out on your partner, and then, he might take it out on someone at work. And so it's this pool of disturbance that that ripples out. And the Stoics were wise enough to say, well, you can stop it at the source. You can turn off the tap by not reacting. They were so wise. I'm just in awe of them. I think they're incredible. So,
yeah, I've also got here, he said, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. And I really liked this one because it really made me think that any sort of emotional reaction that I have to other people's behavior is just them being a master of me, and to sort of take responsibility, sort of speaking back to where we started this conversation in. What do they sort of speak to in relation to taking control of that emotional reaction? Is it just in the awareness, or is there something that they practically do to apply in those situations?
Oh, it's very tricky. That was the trickiest bit with Stoicism for me, was mastering reactions. And it's also a part of mastering desire, which is really difficult. These guys formulated this philosophy prior to knowledge we have on neurochemistry, hormones, the unconscious, and how that affects our actions and reactions. So they were coming at it from a pretty clear path, as if we can just turn on and off the emotion switch, which I don't think we can. So that's enough. And in the book, you'll see that I have pushed back in some instances on bits of Stoicism that I don't think are so useful these days.
Yeah.
The emotion piece is, so they likened emotions to a runaway cart and you're the dog that's attached to the cart by a piece of rope. And, once it starts going down that hill, you get dragged along with it. And once it starts, it's hard to stop. So they talked about stopping it from the source. So the minute the emotion comes up, so say it's anger, the anger comes up, you recognize it, you catch it, and you stop it. You just use reason. So they were big into reason above emotion. So you are conscious of it, you stop it, and then it's not a problem. But once you start, in your brain, once you start getting carried away with either the anger or the desire or the envy or whatever it is, it's really hard to stop it once it's started. And they said there's only a couple of examples of things that we can't control, one of which is like physiological stuff like blushing. That's they call it an impression. That's an impression we get. If I come up behind you and scare you and you get afraid and you go, the startle response is also another thing we can't control. But they pretty much said that everything else, we should be able to control. So it's a lofty ideal, but much harder in practice.
And they speak to sort of being happy with what we've got. How does that sort of apply in relation to also having sort of goals and aspirations?
Yeah, that's an interesting contradiction that I explored and kind of found some answers to doing this book. The Stoics, particularly the Roman Stoics, were incredibly successful. Like Seneca was the equivalent of Elon Musk, extremely wealthy, had a hand in every pie. He was a brilliant playwright. He was an advisor to Nero. He, incredible Stoic. And then Marcus Aurelius was in control of the Roman Empire. So these guys weren't slackers. They weren't unambitious at all. But they said that, and they also had highs and lows. And Seneca had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. So they talked about how you should be ambitious and you should, enjoy your work, but it could all go tomorrow. Like, your company could be taken over. You could have a new boss that for whatever reason doesn't like you and you could lose your job. So not to get too distressed when the worst thing happens, like not to hold onto the reins too tightly.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the same about money, that there were a lot of Stoics, and modern Stoics are incredibly wealthy. But the attitude to wealth is, it's great if you have it, live it up, enjoy it, but definitely don't get used to it. Don't expect that it's always going to be there, because anything could happen. You could lose your money tomorrow. If you had have invested in, say, crypto or something else, you know what it's like to open up that, the app and see that all your money's gone. So, and that's a very Stoic thing, to get used to the losses and the potential losses.
Yeah, you mentioned money. What's sort of their relationship? Because you said, obviously, Marcus, Seneca, they're highly successful people. What is their relationship with, say, like money, fame, having material possessions?
So they had a different relationship between fame and money. Fame they really despised. They did not like fame. They said with money you can use it for good. So if you have, it's not a terrible thing having money. You can live a more comfortable life. Secondly, you can donate it. You can build companies. You can give people jobs. So there's a benefit to having money, but they didn't see any benefit to fame. They just thought fame was something you should try and avoid because it separates you from other people. It means that they were really into community and connections with others. And if you're famous, you do lose that because you're put at a different level. And I now read a lot of sort of profiles of celebrities differently, and often the really, really famous people talk about like the loneliness and lack of privacy, and that they can't sort of go to the supermarket and things like that. So they saw fame as negative, but money is generally positive, but also not, take it or leave it type thing.
In your book, you share that you went through your own form of transformation in writing it. Can you share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, sure. I was a bit reluctant as a Stoic in 2018 when I started doing this. I was doing a column on it for The Guardian, and I do a weekly column, and it's, I move on from one topic to the other, and I found Stoicism it was tricky. The readings were hard. It was harsh. It felt very masculine. And I didn't see a lot in there for me. But a good friend of mine really got into it, and he loved talking about it. So we spent a lot of time talking about Stoicism, and then gradually I started doing some reading. And during lockdown, we'd go on these long walks and argue about various points of Stoicism. And I found that more and more it was starting to seep into my veins. And then people then started asking me Stoic advice, and so it was funny, it crept up on me. And now I find myself wishing that, obviously I can't make everyone be more Stoic, but, wanting to share it with people, because I think it does make life easier. It's made my life a lot easier, mentally and practically. It's just easy. But it wasn't easy at the start. It was hard. So,
right.
And it's similar to, I guess, religions where you have to have a practice. You don't just learn it. It's like getting fit. You can't just go to the gym and get fit and then stop going to the gym. You have to keep reading, or you have to keep kind of at the practice in order to get the benefits. And very similar with Stoicism. But yeah, I guess if I could say in the one way it's changed me, it's just made me a lot more accepting of where I'm at and where the world's at. And when you're more accepting, you're more liable to enjoy yourself, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's this beautiful kind of idea that it's sort of like having this profound acceptance for what is right now, and then sort of in moving forward, focusing on what you can control, letting go of what you can't. It's really quite freeing when you start to sort of play into that. But I completely understand when you speak to, it's a practice, and just because you become aware of these things doesn't necessarily mean overnight everything's going to sort of feel liberating and you're not going to be attached to anything or have any sense of desire. It is a continual practice.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, the test is going to come for me probably when I start to lose people, like when there's more death in my life. There hasn't been a lot so far. And that's when I think I'm really probably going to lean into it.
Yeah.
And what I say to people now is, like, you know, people who are grieving often ask me about Stoicism, and it's not a good thing when you're actually going through grief, but it's good to know it before you go through that, because
interesting,
it's harsh. It's a very harsh kind of it's a harsh philosophy. And if you're grieving and feeling tender, Stoicism can feel like being asked to swallow a huge nasty you know, pill. But getting into it earlier, and then when the bad stuff happens, because it will happen, it will happen to all of us, there's that preparation that's occurred, and a sense of knowing that, you know, the culture sort of 2,000 years ago had all the framework, and they've left it there for us. We can pick it up and put it on, and it's still really useful. So it's hopefully it'll help me when the time comes.
Yeah. Well, thank you for this beautiful converation, and a big congratulations on your beautiful new book. Thank you for sharing some of it. Welcome.
Yeah, it's so great to be on the podcast, and hopefully listeners will embrace Stoicism.
Yeah. We're slightly pushing it here. So on a final note, Brigid, I'd love to ask you, what does it mean to you to be human?
What does it mean to be human? Well, I like this quote from Marcus Aurelius, which is, you know, sort of sums up my thinking as well. Accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart.